I should have known she wouldn't let me have my moment. She never did. Every time something good happened in my life, she had to outdo it. If I got a promotion, she suddenly had a better one. If I bought something nice, she made sure to flaunt something even more expensive. It was like she was obsessed with proving she was superior to me. But this time, she didn't just try to one-up me. She completely humiliated me in front of everyone, stealing what was supposed to be mine, and acting like she had won some game I didn't even know I was playing. I stood there, my heart pounding, my hands clenched into fists as I watched her bask in the attention that should have been mine. She turned to look at me, a slow, satisfied smirk creeping onto her face, as if daring me to say something. The humiliation burned through me as I scanned the room. My husband avoided my gaze, shifting uncomfortably. My in-laws smiled at her like she had done something amazing. The people around us whispered, their expressions a mix of amusement and pity. No one was going to stand up for me. No one ever did. For a split second, I considered doing what I always did, letting it go, forcing a smile, pretending like it didn't bother me. That's what she wanted. That's what everyone expected. I almost turned away, almost swallowed my pride like I had done so many times before. And then I saw it. The way she tilted her chin up just slightly, the way her eyes sparkled with pure, smug satisfaction. She wasn't just happy she had the spotlight, she was thrilled that she had taken it from me. That was the moment something inside me snapped. She thought she had won. She thought she had beaten me, humiliated me, put me in my place for good. She had no idea what was coming. My sister-in-law had always been competitive, but over time it became clear that this wasn't just some harmless rivalry. She needed to win at everything, even if it meant tearing me down. At first I tried to ignore it, thinking she would eventually get tired of the game, but the more I brushed it off, the worse it got. It started with small, petty digs, the kind that were easy to dismiss but built up over time. Whenever I wore something new, she'd make a snide comment like, "Oh, that's cute. I remember wearing something similar back when it was in style a few years ago." If I got a compliment at a family dinner, she would quickly shift the conversation to herself, making sure no one focused on me for too long. But soon, she stopped trying to be subtle. The competition escalated when she started blatantly copying everything I did, but always with a twist to make sure she had the upper hand. When I landed a promotion at work after months of late nights and hard work, she miraculously had one too, except hers was much harder to get and way more impressive. When my husband and I bought our first home, she somehow managed to close on a bigger house within the same month, making sure to brag about how much more space they had. If I planned a vacation, she would book one to the same destination, but in a resort that was so much more exclusive. She wanted to make sure that no matter what I did, she would always be seen as the one who did it better. Still, I swallowed my pride and let it go. I told myself it was childish to care about her games, but then she decided that stealing my spotlight wasn't enough. She wanted to see me fail. It started when she began inserting herself into my work. We didn't work at the same company, but our fields overlapped just enough for her to take an interest in what I did. At first, she pretended to ask for career advice, playing innocent and making me feel like I was just being paranoid. But then I noticed a pattern, opportunity that could open doors for me. The stakes were high, and I had poured my heart and soul into making sure everything was perfect. One night at a family gathering, I casually mentioned the project, excited about what I had planned. She listened intently, nodding, smiling, asking just enough questions to make it seem like she was genuinely interested. I didn't think much of it. A week later, my boss called for an emergency meeting. Someone from another company had proposed an identical project. I felt my stomach drop. When he said the name of the person who pitched it, her name, I couldn't believe my ears. I sat there in stunned silence as my coworkers debated what to do next. Meanwhile, my mind raced. How had she even gotten the details? How did she know enough to take my work and make it her own? I thought back to our last conversation, the way she had subtly pried for information, how I had unknowingly told her everything. She had played me. I confronted her later that night, but she just shrugged, smiling. "Oh, great minds think alike. I guess I was just a little faster." Her voice was light and casual, but the look in her eyes was anything but innocent. I told my husband what happened, expecting him to be outraged, but he just sighed. "Look, I know it's unfair, but competition happens in the real world. Maybe next time don't talk about your ideas so openly." And just like that, the issue was brushed aside. She had won that round, but she wasn't done. A few weeks later, my birthday was coming up. My husband had planned a small family gathering to celebrate. Nothing fancy, just a dinner with loved ones. For once, I wanted to enjoy a moment where I wasn't being compared to her, where I could just be happy without it turning into some kind of competition. But of course, she wouldn't allow that. Just as everyone had raised their glasses for a toast in my honor, she stood up dramatically, placing a hand on her stomach and sighed. I guess now is as good a time as any to share the news. She glanced at her husband, who grinned proudly before turning back to the table. We're expecting. We just found out yesterday. The room erupted into cheers and congratulations. My mother-in-law nearly burst into tears, hugging her tightly, and suddenly my birthday was forgotten. I watched as my birthday cake was practically pushed aside in favor of discussing baby names, nursery themes, and due dates. I sat there stunned, watching as everyone completely erased the fact that this was supposed to be my night. My husband squeezed my hand under the table and gave me a sympathetic smile, but he didn't say anything, because what could he say? She had just accidentally stolen my spotlight again, and no one was going to call her out for it. After that night, something shifted. It wasn't just competition anymore. She wasn't just trying to outshine me. She wanted to drag me down. I started noticing weird tension in the family. Conversations would stop when I entered the room. My in-laws, who had always been polite, started treating me like I was some kind of disappointment. Even my husband seemed distant, like he didn't know how to talk to me anymore. I had no idea why, until I overheard a conversation I was never supposed to hear. I was at my mother-in-law's house waiting for my husband to finish helping his dad with something in the garage. As I passed by the kitchen, I heard her voice, low and hushed, but dripping with false concern. I just feel bad for her, you know? She sighed. I mean, I know she tries, but sometimes I wonder, would she even have the things she has if it weren't for her husband? Like, he's been so patient with her, but she doesn't appreciate it. And at work? I hate to say it, but I think people only give her opportunities because they feel bad for her. It's not like she's actually that talented. The question started off easy. Surface level, nothing that would cause alarm. But then someone pushed deeper. So tell us, what's your perspective on the latest developments in this field? She blinked, smiled, tried to throw out some generic answer. Interesting, but how do you feel about the specific changes in implementation? Silence. I watched as she hesitated, reaching for some vague response, but before she could, another expert jumped in. Wait, didn't you mention you led a project like this? Can you walk us through your methodology? Now she was sweating. She fumbled, trying to piece together bits of information she had overheard from me in the past, but she didn't actually know anything. And that was when they pounced. That's strange, because according to company records, the work you're referencing was done by someone else. Would you like to clarify? And just like that, the entire room turned against her. She tried to stammer her way out, claimed she must have misspoken, but it was too late. People started whispering. The polite smiles faded. The professionals who could have helped her were suddenly done with her. She barely lasted another 10 minutes before she fled the event, humiliated. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, word had already spread. The people she had been trying to impress weren't just indifferent. They were actively warning others about her. No one wanted to be associated with a fraud. The opportunities she had been chasing? Gone. The doors she had been trying to force open slammed shut. Her perfect image shattered overnight. But the real knife in the back? Her own family turned on her. She had spent years twisting the narrative, making me seem less than, convincing them that she was the golden child. But now they were disappointed in her. They weren't defending her actions anymore, they were questioning her. The same people who had blindly believed her were suddenly embarrassed by her. And my husband? He finally saw it. The manipulation, the lies, the way she had orchestrated my downfall for years. He wasn't making excuses for her anymore. He wasn't telling me to let it go. He was angry, not just at her, but at himself for ever doubting me. And she? She had lost everything she had worked so hard to steal. Her reputation was in ruins. The people she had fooled weren't fooled anymore. She had no power left, no influence, no way to twist the story in her favor. And the best part? I never had to raise my voice. I never had to fight her in public, never had to beg for anyone's approval. I didn't need to scream the truth. I just let her expose herself. She had spent years trying to destroy me, but in the end she had only destroyed herself. She thought she had won. She thought she had buried me for good. But the truth was, I was never playing her game. I had simply stepped aside and let her lose her own. After everything she had done, every stolen moment, every lie, every twisted truth to make me look small, it was finally over. She had spent years manipulating people, crafting a perfect image by stepping on me, but in the end, she was the one who set herself up for failure. She was so obsessed with proving she was better that she never stopped to think what would happen when everyone saw through the act. And now they had. The people she once tried to impress were shutting her out, her stolen opportunities were gone, and even her own family, who had always defended her, was now embarrassed by her actions. She had built her success on deception, and when the truth came out, there was nothing left. But the real victory wasn't in watching her fall. It was in knowing that I didn't need to compete with her at all. For so long, I had let her get to me. I had let her dictate my self-worth, allowed her to make me question whether I was enough. But the truth was, I had never needed to prove anything to her, to my in-laws, to anyone. She was the one who needed constant validation, who had to destroy others to feel powerful. I didn't need to outshine her. I just needed to keep being myself. She had always been playing a game. I had simply stopped playing, and that was what truly destroyed her. Some people thrive on competition, not because they want to be better, but because they need to feel superior. They aren't happy with their own success unless it comes at someone else's expense. But people like that will always end up ruining themselves. The more they try to climb by stepping on others, the more unstable their foundation becomes. The best way to deal with someone like that isn't to fight them on their level. It's not about screaming the truth or trying to convince people of their lies. The best revenge is letting them reveal who they truly are, because eventually they always do. And when that moment comes, you won't need to do anything at all.